We have not been contacted. That is very good news. That is what the State Department press secretary said today. We have not been contacted. The question was, have you heard from anyone on the Trump transition team? We have not been contacted. That was the answer at the State Department today, same answer at the Pentagon, same answer at the Justice Department. It's the same answer at every single department and agency in the federal government controlled by the president. There's a sign in the lobby of the State Department pointing to the transition office, but there's no one there because the Trump transition team has not supplied the name of the person who will be the official contact for the State Department. The State Department has a big briefing book waiting for that person. The State Department has all kinds of guidelines waiting for that person. They have all sorts of advice they're ready to give that person, but they can't give that material to anyone but the person who is specifically and officially designated by the Trump administration as the State Department contact, and there is so far no such person. This is something that no one outside of the Trump transition office should worry about. This is something that America should not worry about. The State Department alone has 400 jobs that the president has to fill. I showed you the plum book last night, this giant thing. It's called officially United States Government Policy and Supporting Positions. This is the book that contains all of the jobs, 4,000 jobs that the president has to fill. Everybody in Washington who wants one of these jobs studies this book. It's called the Plum Book, because the people in Washington turn the pages looking for the plum that they want, the job that they want. Here are the State Department pages right here in the middle of the book. About 40 jobs per page, 10 pages, 400 jobs, including, of course, the legislative management officer. Actually, there's one for the House, one for the Senate, also all the undersecretaries, the assistant secretaries, the special envoy for monitoring and combating anti-Semitism. That's in here. All sorts of jobs that the public doesn't know here, all sorts of jobs that most people have never heard about, that I've never heard about. Rudy Giuliani, a possible candidate for Secretary of State, has never heard about. The remarkable slowness of the Trump transition team in filling all these jobs is a very good thing. The incompetence of the Trump transition team, the likes of which we've never seen, is a bad thing. And so the longer incompetent people delay in doing what they're doing, we're always better off whenever incompetent people are delaying what they're going to do. And in this case, the government will essentially be run by the people who are running it now. The top-level Obama appointees will leave by Inauguration Day, but the professional, permanent staff that lies right beneath them will still be in place, making everything work until the Trump appointees start populating the offices on top of them. So far, there is no indication that we should be eager for the Trump employees to take their places in those offices. The rumored front runner for Trump's Secretary of State is former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who of course has no foreign policy experience. He would be the first Secretary of State whose last public office was mayor, the most thoroughly domestic public office that we have. Rudy Giuliani is on the list not because of competence, not because of foreign policy experience. He's on the list entirely because of loyalty to Donald Trump. In pre-Trump Washington, where the old rules applied, Rudy Giuliani could never survive the Senate confirmation process. The FBI background check would show that he had an out-of-control affair with his press secretary while he was mayor of New York, that his marital life became unhinged with his wife kicking him out of the mayor's residence of Gracie Mansion, that he took up residence as a house guest in an apartment owned by friends of his. The friends were a loving gay couple. And that is the best thing I know about Rudy Giuliani, is that in his most desperate moment, desperate time of need, he turned to a gay couple for help. He didn't think, no, I can't do that. It'll look bad if I go to them. He went where he felt safe, and good for him. Good that he did that. But he needed to feel safe because he turned his life into a public mess that the New York tabloids covered daily and that the country never paid attention to, and the country has forgotten if they did pay attention to it. Rudy Giuliani would bring conflicts of interest into any Senate confirmation hearing that would be impossible to clear if confirmation hearings operate under the same gravitational forces that they used to in the pre-Trump era. But we are in a new era where campaign rules certainly don't apply. And who knows what other rules don't apply. The question for the Republicans running the confirmation hearings in the United States Senate is whose rules are they going to use? Their own rules or Trump rules? Senator Jeff Sessions is reportedly on the Trump shortlist to be either the next Secretary of Defense or the next Attorney General of the United States. According to the old rules, Senator Jeff Sessions could not be confirmed by the United States Senate because, in fact, he wasn't. When Ronald Reagan nominated him for a federal district court judgeship, the Senate Judiciary Committee rejected his nomination, something the committee had not done in 50 years. Jeff Sessions is now the chairman of the committee that rejected him. He sits beside the ranking Democrat, Patrick Leahy, who voted against Jeff Sessions' nomination in that committee in 1986. Strom Thurmond, the former segregationist candidate for president, was the Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee in 1986. And he tried to get Jeff Sessions' nomination through that committee, but he couldn't because Republicans defected and voted with all the Democrats to reject Jeff Sessions' nomination when they discovered that when he was working as a prosecutor in Alabama, he called the NAACP un-American, and he addressed a black lawyer as boy. That's why Jeff Sessions couldn't get through Senate confirmation process under the old rules followed by Democrats and Republicans. He couldn't get through a Republican-controlled committee. If Jeff Sessions had been an editor of something like Breitbart, Ronald Reagan wouldn't have even nominated him. The Reagan administration discovered those things about Jeff Sessions only after he was nominated. But that was then. And Trump is now. Trump is now. And we don't know what the rules are now. Someone who traffics in much more than what Jeff Sessions said back then will be with the president every day in the White House as his senior strategist. We don't know who will be in that president's cabinet. And we don't know that now for two reasons. Donald Trump hasn't decided. And most importantly, we don't know if the old rules still apply. Joining us now, John Heilman, managing editor of Bloomberg Politics and co-host of With All Due Respect on MSNBC. Also with us, Mike Murphy, longtime GOP strategist and host of the podcast Radio Free GOP. He is an MSNBC political analyst. Mike Murphy, I want to go to you for the Republican perspective on this transition. It's looking pretty messy from where we're sitting.
Yeah, it's messy. Now, we've had messy transitions before, but we're in new territory here. I think one of the main reasons why, I think there are really two reasons. One, there's kind of a culture of infighting in the Trump political world. We saw so much of that during the campaign, and it's not surprising that hasn't changed. It's just unfortunate. And second, I think most, if not all, of the senior Trump people, I believe this on some authority, thought they were going to lose. So there wasn't that much focus on the transition, at least not as much as you get on a campaign that's highly confident they're going to win. So they're kind of behind the eight ball to begin with. The infighting to me is the more worrisome thing, because normally these transition efforts are about expanding to get the widest possible talent pool, and they seem to be kind of in a purge mode to narrow, and that will not serve President-elect Trump very well.
All right, we're going to break in here. We have some breaking news about the Trump transition. We're going to be joined by phone now by NBC's Kristen Welker. Kristen?
Hi there, Lawrence. Good evening. Well, I'm just learning that according to a source familiar with the transition process, President-elect Donald Trump intends to select Lieutenant General Michael Flynn as his national security advisor. Again, this is according to a source familiar with the transition process. Just to remind everyone who Flynn is, he ran the Defense Intelligence Agency from 2012 to 2014. He served as a top national intelligence advisor to General Stanley McChrystal in Iraq. He was one of Trump's top national security advisors throughout the campaign. As you will recall, a number of foreign policy experts distanced themselves from Donald Trump, not Michael Flynn. This is someone who's considered a loyalist, and as we have watched this transition process unfold, again roiled by reports of turmoil, Donald Trump seems to be really focusing right now in this initial phase on loyalists. So it would fit into that broader pattern. Now, I would, of course, caveat all of this that until we hear this from the president-elect himself, it's not etched in stone. But at this hour, according to this source who is familiar with the transition process, President-elect Donald Trump intends to select Lieutenant General Michael Flynn as his national security advisor. This is not a position that requires confirmation. This is a pick that, like his chief of staff, he gets to choose on his own and have installed.
Kristen, any word on when this announcement will be made?
I do not have exact timing, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get word within the next 24 hours, sometime tomorrow. You recall that Eric Trump earlier today said it's likely we're going to have some names by the end of the day today. That has not happened. They are feeling some pressure to get some of these names out, to start filling in the blanks of this cabinet. So I have not been given exact timing, but I wouldn't be surprised if we learned within the next day or two at the latest.
John Heilman, key point here is that this is a White House job, no Senate confirmation involved, and General Flynn would certainly have a bumpy road in Senate confirmation.
He would. He's a very controversial figure for a variety of reasons. He's someone who, again, controversial not just among Democrats who obviously are not going to like most of Donald Trump's appointments, but controversial among many people in the national security establishment, many people in the Republican mainstream. The thing about this appointment that, again, goes to me is most, if this is true, right? National security advisors, like White House chiefs of staff, their job generally, if they're competent and qualified and effective, is to be honest brokers in the White House. That's what they're there for. They're not there to be advocates generally. They're not there to be partisans. They're not there to be ideologues. The ones who do the job very well are the ones who lay out the range of options, filter down the range of options that are available to the president, lay them out in an honest brokerish way, and then let the president make the choice among those options, which is why, in general, when you're putting together a White House staff and putting together a good one, you're looking for someone there who's not someone who's going to be heavy-handed, not someone who has profound, passionate commitments, but someone who, again, will play that role of honest broker. Michael Flynn, not exactly cut from that cloth, someone who has very, very strong views about almost everything in the realm of national security and defense.
Mike Murphy, that point about it doesn't require Senate confirmation, so you get to pick who you want, obviously is a factor in this. But as John says, that job is the one that is physically closest to the president every day, closer than Secretary of State, closer than Secretary of Defense, and is supposed to be the funnel through which all of that information comes.
Right. It's originally a super bureaucratic job to balance all the interests of the security aspects of the cabinet between defense and intelligence and, of course, the State Department. But really, beginning with the Nixon White House under Henry Kissinger, it became kind of a super powerful position. But John's right. It's traditionally the honest broker job. And I think the pattern we're seeing here, if this is true, and it probably is, it's been leaked kind of before he was the front runner, is that President-elect Trump is going for people he knows and people he feels are loyal to him. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But the troubling thing is I don't know that President Trump knows that many people. I'm not sure how big the menu is. And there is, as John said, some bit of, what would I say, controversy that while General Flynn is well experienced in intelligence matter, he is a controversial figure in the national security establishment in both parties.
We're joined now by Ken Vogel of Politico, who, Ken, you have some reporting on General Flynn tonight?
Yeah, that's right. I was told that General Flynn and a guy by the name of Carl Higbee, a former Navy SEAL who served 2 tours in Operation Iraqi Freedom, who was a spokesman for one of the pro-Donald Trump super PACs, that Flynn and Higbee were seen recently at the Pentagon meeting with some officials there. So I think that we have seen some preparations being made in this regard, even as you reported in the opening, we haven't seen the landing teams, as they've called them, actually meeting with folks at these agencies in official context. Now, that said, there was just a conference call that the Trump transition team held with reporters in which they said that they are announcing their landing team tomorrow on the national security front. This is the NSC, so Flynn would be included potentially in that, as well as DOJ, Department of Defense, and Department of State. So they're clearly making moves. They may not be moves that insiders like. In fact, Flynn has said that he would support cutting half the workforce, the civilian workforce, workforce at the Pentagon. So you see already these controversial, but that fits in. That reform-minded approach fits in with the one that Donald Trump has espoused so far.
And John, once again, we see loyalty seems to be the #1 characteristic for a Donald Trump selection. General Flynn being obviously tightly loyal to Donald Trump throughout the campaign.
Yes, and someone who, I mean, again, to get into some of the substance of why Flynn is so controversial, in the national security establishment, it is somewhat frowned upon for people to take extremely harsh partisan roles in campaigns. This is a guy who stood up at the Republican convention and reveled in the chants of "lock her up" about Hillary Clinton, who's called President Obama a liar, who has just said that the U.S. justice system is corrupt. He's become someone who, for a lot of his former colleagues, people like Stanley McChrystal, who looked at General Flynn and sort of said, this is not the person I thought I knew, not the kind of person who was kind of a more buttoned-up kind of military figure, and that partisan tone. Also someone who has advocated for much tighter ties with Russia and had raised some eyebrows in terms of some of the consorting that he did around Washington, seen at a dinner party, famously sitting next to Vladimir Putin. Again, raised a lot of eyebrows among national security officials who looked at him and thought these kind of behaviors were not what they had thought what he was like previously, and there's a kind of an undercurrent of the stories we read during the campaign of this was a guy we thought we knew who seems to have changed in a profound way and become this much more kind of partisan figure, much more controversial figure, like someone who I think, if you're right, Lawrence, put in a position where he had to get Senate confirmation, again, under the old rules, that you stipulated before, would have a very hard time.
Right, and so Senate confirmations, people should remember, in these kinds of jobs, are normally routine for defense secretaries, and what you're looking for is how much turbulence do you have with the minority party? How much turbulence do you have with the other party? How much trouble do the Democrats cause for a particular nominee on the way to actually being confirmed? And usually it's very, very little. And in some of these instances, they clearly would be able to stop them, and they'd get Republicans to switch and stop them. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and that's right. You know, Lawrence, I mean, what John just mentioned there about the ties with Russia, I mean, he advocated for closer cooperation with Russia in the Middle East. Those would be things that would raise concerns among Republicans who are already uneasy with the nice things that President-elect Trump has said about Putin, has said about warming of relations with Russia, and to have people around him like Flynn, like Paul Manafort, his former campaign chairman, who my sources say is still talking to President-elect Donald Trump and has close ties to the pro-Russian Ukrainian party and oligarchs there. Those are things that would raise concern among hawkish Republicans.
Kristen Welker.
There's also...
Hold on a second, Mike. I just want to get to Kristen for a second before she has to go. Kristen Welker, the Trump campaign has said that they will have their official designees at the State Department, Defense Department, and national security agencies tomorrow. What are we hearing about the rest of the government? Some of those, they are more than a week away from getting their official contacts ready.
That's right, and I think they're feeling some pressure to fill in these blanks before Thanksgiving, many of them at least. If you look back at past administrations, they're probably a little bit behind where former President George W. Bush was. He filled out his cabinet fairly quickly. President Obama, it took him a number of days to do that, and it took former President Bill Clinton even longer. So they're not so far behind. At the same time, Lawrence, I stress that point, they are feeling the pressure. They want to start naming names, particularly because they have all of these reports of turmoil. One more point I'll just make about Flynn is that we're already seeing, and we've seen Democrats come forward and start to express their opposition. Adam Schiff, who's, of course, the ranking member on the House Select Committee, said earlier today, I'd be worried about an impulsive president with an impulsive national security advisor. So even though this isn't a position that necessarily requires confirmation, I think you're going to see some pushback if, in fact, and when this does happen.
Kristen Welker, thank you very much for joining us with this breaking news tonight.
Thank you.
Mike Murphy, I think I cut you off there as Kristen was joining us.
No, just a point about General Flynn. He has a reputation for having a very strong point of view, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But in that job at the NSC, you're supposed to be the fair broker that all the other interests can work with. And there was this at least leaked story about early in the process for candidate Trump to get intelligence briefings that Flynn attended and kept interrupting the professional, briefer from the intelligence community, leading Governor Christie, who at that time had a larger profile in Trump land, to kind of interrupt and tell him to pipe down. So That's not normally the personality you see in a national security advisor who's supposed to get all the feuding departments and cabinet agencies to work well together.
And Ken Vogel, what is the word you're getting on other potential nominees? Today was a day when other names started to emerge. People like Nikki Haley and others for different jobs, additions to the possible lists.
Yeah, I think we're going to see them focus on these landing teams, as they call them, the ones that interact with the actual agencies and sort of facilitate the transition of power. And we'll see some hints in them, the folks who are named to them, of folks who are going to be possibly nominees themselves, or the allies of those folks will be the folks on these landing teams. That's why I think this news about General Flynn was so interesting, coming the day before they announced the landing team for national security. So that's something to keep an eye on, these landing teams. And it also is, as Kristen suggested, an effort by the Trump team to change the narrative that they're totally disorganized. It's not a coincidence that they had this press call hastily organized tonight. Literally like an hour before they had the call, they sent out an email to reporters, and they say that now every single day at 10:30 in the morning, they're going to have one of these calls to update reporters on who Donald Trump is meeting with, as well as possible nomination announcements.
And John, the crucial thing about the so-called landing teams, the official designees, is that's how you actually populate those 400 jobs in the State Department. Getting the secretary is the easy part, compared to what the rest of those jobs are.
Yes, and it's one of these things that, goes to, one doesn't want to disqualify people from the presidency who have never served in the military or who have never served in public office before. It's fine in principle that an outsider could come in and become president of the United States. But one of the things that you're lacking, if you come from that background, is a lot of connections to the kind of networks of policy and regulatory and administrative specialists who you would populate a government with. Donald Trump obviously knows many, many people in the country, but does he know 4,000 people through his extended networks? I don't mean personally, but can he, in the way that someone like Barack Obama, someone like George W. Bush, someone like Bill Clinton could, with effort and with organization, with preparation, eventually fill those 4,000 jobs with people who all at least met minimum qualifications and often exceeded minimum qualifications. It's not clear that Donald Trump has that, even if he thought he was going to win. It's not clear that he has that, and he did not think he was going to win. And so they are in a very difficult posture. I agree with you in some sense that letting the bureaucrats, if you will, letting the career government officials run things is an okay idea for a while. The problem is that those jobs will eventually be filled. And the question is, at some point, when they start to just fill them with people, if they're really late to this party, who will those people be? And how much damage can they do?
Yeah, and most of these jobs are not Senate confirmation jobs. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think they further limited the pool tonight, because they announced on this press call that they would have not just a lobbying ban for people incoming, they wouldn't be allowed to be lobbyists and work on the transition team, but a 5-year post-employment lobbying ban. That's unprecedented. That's more than twice as long as what President Obama had, and President Obama actually had a difficult time finding people who are career government services professionals, because lobbying is such a part of the industry here that anyone who works in this community who is qualified, like, chances are at some point in time they will do something akin to lobbying, whether they're actually registered as a lobbyist or not. It was interesting to see this was an effort to emphasize the drain the swamp sort of approach to creating a new government, but I think it also may play into this problem that he's having of attracting a wide pool of talented and experienced folks.
Mike Murphy, you are a non-lobbying Republican. They need you.
Well, the problem with draining the swamp is you also kill everything that lives in the swamp. And some swamp life is useful and has an important role. I think the other thing, I agree with the point about the career staff, but one of the worries, I'm up here today, I have a role at a defense-oriented think tank, and was meeting with some people, and one thing you got to remember is if you get your top appointments wrong, you start to lose professional staff.
Yes. Yeah.
And because Donald Trump's controversial to begin with, there's some stress. There are people thinking about their career plan, and like the master sergeants of the Army, the machinery runs on this professional staff. You don't want to lose them, and so you have to be careful about the signals you send. There has been talk about some of the people in the National Security Council, the longtime kind of not particularly partisan staff, And I'll be interested to see if the next wave of leaks indicates unhappiness there. That's something the Trump people have to manage. Lastly, I'd say haste does not solve the problem. If they're getting press heat for being slow, that's bad, but better to be slow and right than quick and not good. So I would be careful if I were them about rushing out stuff if they're not ready. And it looks to me like in many areas they're just not ready yet. They have some time.
We have to get a quick break in here now. John Heilemann, Mike Murphy, Ken Vogel, thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Coming up next.
We do have breaking news in the transition of power as President-elect Trump begins to make appointments. First, sources tell CNN that Kansas Congressman Mike Pompeo has been asked to be CIA director, or that he has been selected by Donald Trump to be his CIA director. Moments before, a source tells CNN the president-elect has selected Senator Jeff Sessions to be Attorney General. Here to discuss that and much more, Florida member of Congress and former chair of the Democratic National Committee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate you being here. Congratulations on your own re-election. You are the first official we've had a chance to talk to since the news of these appointments from Donald Trump selected Jeff Sessions to be Attorney General, Mike Pompeo, your colleague in the House, to be director of the CIA. Your thoughts on these appointments?
Well, while these are two certainly experienced elected officials, it is their personal views, particularly Jeff Sessions, that continue the drumbeat, the roller coaster ride that Donald Trump is engaging in who he's surrounding himself with. I mean, let's remember that Jeff Sessions was nominated for a federal judgeship by President Reagan, and at the time was one of only 2 in 50 years to be rejected by the Senate Judiciary Committee, which was controlled by Republicans at the time, because of his previous racist statements and really outrageous comments. I mean, the references he's made to the NAACP, the racist and sexist comments he made, which he at the time owned up to, was not even something that could be stomached by the Republican Senate Judiciary Committee at the time. And so, between the Steve Bannon appointment as his chief strategist, a step and a heartbeat next to the presidency, one person who fans the flames and gives permission to sexism, racism, and anti-Semitism on his shoulder, and next door at the Justice Department, a person who also shares those views. It's really getting more and more disturbing. And clear that Donald Trump is not trying to bring the country together with the moves he's making right out of the gate.
Jeff Sessions, this was 1986, you're absolutely right, was rejected in committee. He denies making a few of the statements that were attributed to him. He admitted some of the others right there, and he points out, and so do Trump insiders, that he was elected to Senate many times after that, so the people of Alabama,
Sure.
they endorsed him. As for Steve Bannon, you've signed on to a letter among many Democrats who are very concerned about Donald Trump appointing him to this White House job of chief strategist.
Yes.
But other than a strongly worded letter at this point, there's really nothing you can do about it, is there?
What the presidency affords the right of the individual to surround themselves with whom they want at the White House, certainly. But it's also my responsibility as an elected official, as the first Jewish woman to represent Florida in Congress. I take that role very seriously. And when you have someone who is literally the chief strategist, the top advisor to the President of the United States, who has given permission and fanned the flames of anti-Semitism, promoted racist views, promoted anti-Muslim views through a journalistic publication that he led. That's truly problematic and disturbing. It sends a strong and clear message as to the kind of policies that are going to be promoted by this administration. And we can't take. It means that we can't take Donald Trump at his word after he was elected a couple of weeks ago that he intends to bring the nation together. Having someone who is literally a door in the hallway away from the President of the United States, who believes that women who are feminists, for example, don't want husbands, don't love their children, and essentially have no right to to be supportive of women being equals is really outrageous.
I do understand you're talking about articles that were published in Breitbart while Steve Bannon was in charge of it. Just to be clear about that. If we can, I want to talk for a few minutes about the Democratic Party right now, because obviously it's a party trying to figure out what happened more than a week ago and trying to figure out what to do next. And in the House of Representatives, the Democratic caucus, you have all delayed election for leadership posts. And Congressman Tim Ryan, who just appeared on the show a short time ago, has announced he will run against Nancy Pelosi for the job of minority leader. This is why he said the party needs new leadership in the House. We have sound? We had sound?
Well, we're losing. I mean, that's the big story, and I think part of it is our message isn't connecting with working class folks. Black folks, brown folks, white folks, gay, straight, rich, poor, black, white. You know, we got to have a message that connects with everybody. And so I don't want to hang this around Nancy Pelosi's neck. I love her. She's great. She's a mentor. She was amazing as speaker when she was in. But we've got to ask ourselves, who can get us back into the majority?
So is Congressman Ryan right that you have to do something different going forward?
Well, let me just say, Tim Ryan is one of my closest friends in the Democratic caucus, and I have, been proud to fight side by side with him, particularly when we were both, newer members of Congress and standing on the House floor in the 30-something working group and talking about what was important to progressives and younger Americans. But the reality that we're facing here is that we are going to be dealing with a legislative train wreck coming at us at warp speed. And there is nobody, in my mind, that is more battle-tested and prepared or, frankly, savvy enough to be able to go toe-to-toe with Paul Ryan, the Republican leadership, and this really troubling and disturbing administration than Nancy Pelosi. We absolutely have to make sure that when it comes to policy, that we are ready to beat back their really disturbing proposals with our full strength. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't also need to make sure that we broaden the leadership table and that we make sure that we focus clearly on messaging. One of the things that we absolutely have to do is emphasize our economic focus, emphasize the things that we've accomplished. We're the party that rescued the American automobile industry, John. We're the party that pushed through and supported middle-class tax cuts. We're the party that made sure that everyone, which primarily helped people who are of lower income, has access to health care and can go to the doctor when they're sick. And so that message was definitely lost, whether we didn't argue it clearly enough or whether we need to make sure that we have more messengers that people are able to hear and that cut through. It's a really important thing that we do. I just think we need to do it with a more broad-based group of people and more clear and focused strategy.
Quickly,
and I'm confident Nancy Pelosi is committed to doing that.
All right, so number one, you just threw your support behind Nancy Pelosi. I'm not sure that was in question, but you're going to vote for Nancy Pelosi to remain as leader. How about your old job, chair of the Democratic National Committee? Who do you support to be the next chair of the Democratic National Committee?
Well, I have tremendous respect for my former colleagues at the DNC, and it's their decision, and I'm not going to weigh in on who it should be. I do know that it's going to be important for us to retool and gear up. We've got to focus on both the grassroots. It's going to need to be somebody who can both raise the resources, focus on grassroots outreach, make sure that we continue to build on our digital and organizational successes, and take a hard look at where we need to improve. And I'm confident that the DNC membership will do that. Taking
a pass on DNC chair, but supporting Nancy Pelosi for House Minority Leader. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, member of Congress from the state of Florida. Thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
John, here's a question. What divides America the most? Is it race, socioeconomic class? Is it education, geography? Wait until you see the panel we have assembled to debate this. We have Anna Navarro, Charles Blow, and J.D. Vance next. Also, hear what they say about Trump's new cabinet picks. Pop the popcorn, everyone.